Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Committee Insights, Taking the Long View, Strategic Facility Design Considerations for the Schedule III Era. I'm Brian Gilbert, NCIA's Director of Engagement and Experience, and I'll be your host today on behalf of the National Cannabis Industry Association. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome returning viewers to the third part of our new multi-part series, where we've been exploring the evolving landscape of cannabis regulations, following the historic news that the Department of Justice has proposed a federal regulatory change that would reclassify cannabis from Schedule I to a Schedule III drug in the Controlled Substances Act. If you missed our previous episodes, Episode 1 discussed the implications of Schedule III and Section 280E, while Episode 2 examined the impact on research and safety standards. Today, we'll dive deeper with our Facility Design Committee into strategic considerations for facility design and operations in this new era. To kick things off, I'd like to welcome Shawn Cooney, Chair of NCIA's Facility Design Committee, as well as our frequent Industry Essentials contributor, to moderate today's conversation. Great to see you here virtually as always. Welcome back for what will surely be another enlightening and insightful conversation. I'll turn it over to you to introduce some of our FDC veterans and newcomers and take it from there.
Hey, thank you, Brian. So I'm Shawn Cooney. I'm the chair of the NCIA Facility Design Committee, and I've been in the Facility Design Committee for the past 4 years. And I'm calling in from Massachusetts, where I have a cannabis facility in Boston, Mass. So let's start with Kim. Kim, say hello to everybody and let them know, who you are, where you're from.
My name is Kim Canapel. I work with Modern Thermal Design. It's a new company, and well, it's not a new company. I'm new to the company, and I'm new to NCIA, so bear with me. But I come from a long family of farmers and agriculturally conscious socially as well. In rural Kentucky. And what I hope to impart is that there are ways that you can save money with renewables and sustainable energy, just to keep it clear. I'm not an engineer, but I work with many consultants to the marijuana industry specifically.
Right. Sounds great, Kim. Thanks for coming. And now we have Jeremy. Let us know what's up.
Yeah, so Jeremy Schlicher, I'm principal architect for Urban Green Design Ltd. We're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Firm focuses primarily on sustainable design across the board. We've been in the cannabis industry for the last 8 years, and hopefully we'll be able to engage everybody in various aspects of facility design and construction today that will help improve your facilities across the board, whether it's cultivation, retail, processing, et cetera. So feel free to shoot the questions at us. Happy to try to answer.
Great. Thanks, guys. So just to set the stage a little bit, I don't know who's been attending the previous sessions, but I'd like to do a quick summary of the money effects of 280E and what the public policy changes should be. So we're not going to waste a whole lot of time because I'm not sure who's been listening to all the things, but basically right now we're in a public comment period. It started in mid-May and it's going to go till mid-July when the DEA is accepting comments. There's been about 800 comments up to this point. And after the public comment period ends, the DEA will take into account the public comments, and there's no guarantee what time, or there's no they don't have to act within a certain period of time. So it's a little gray as to when things will happen. Aaron from the NCIA has a feeling that it will take until the end of the year or the election to actually have the DEA change the scheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, mainly because of the political effects that it's been promised by President Joe Biden, and there's motivation for the rescheduling to happen before the election or by the end of the year. So things are moved. The train is moving. It's still an open time frame, but it's moving. The train's moving in the right direction. And there's how to frame this. The benefit of it. The main benefit is going to be the changes in 280E. The changes to your taxes, and it seems like the effective tax rate in retail is 70% or more. The effective tax rate in cultivation and manufacturing is still 60%, even though the folks in manufacturing and cultivation can deduct about 60%. Can deduct their cost of goods sold. That compares to a regular business of a 20 to 30% total effective tax rate. So it's there's a big chunk of change that could be coming to you. And the advice basically seems to be from the accountants, plan. Get up to date on your bills, and don't change your filing schedules until this actually goes into effect. Don't jump the gun and stop sending your quarterly payments in, but start the planning. Get ready to pay off some old bills, and then do what we're talking about here. Plan for the future. How can I take advantage of these changes to be more efficient, to save money, and to make more money. Again, it's going to change. It'll be different for MSOs and small businesses, but the effect will flow to everybody. In addition to folks that are in retail or manufacturing or cultivation, it's going to also flow to people in service businesses, to marketing people, to planning people, to engineers, to people who sell products. So everybody in the industry will see this flow happen, and it should be a great thing. So now that I've gone on a little bit about accounting, which I'm not an expert at, hopefully we can get down to some brass tacks. And so I'd like Jeremy. You're the main engineer here. What do you think? What's a list of how folks should be planning this? You've talked about the triple bottom line. Maybe you can start there and move people into this.
Well, I'm gonna touch a little bit real quickly on some of the financial stuff that you just said, just kind of segue into it all. It's something that as I was preparing for this, and I put in our notes that I think it was in 2022, there was $1.8 billion in excess taxes paid based on those percentage numbers that Shawn just gave. So think about reinvesting that back into your businesses and what that can do for you. And then the next kind of aspect of this too is this idea of potentially opening up more traditional funding for facilities. Instead of your equity investors, you have traditional bank lending for construction loans and renovation loans and things like that, which ultimately then you'd be able to write off your interest on those loans like a traditional business can, like I can with my architecture practice, but you as a cannabis business can't right now. So those are all benefits as kind of that long-term projection on how you prepare your finances. But going into what Shawn kind of was asking about, how do you prepare? Like, what are you thinking about? Well, with regards to cannabis facilities, and we'll get a little bit more, I think, later on detail to specific cultivation, retail, processing, et cetera. But you really have to start with an existing facility analysis. You have to understand what's going on with your facility, whether that's doing energy and water audits, blower door testing, assessing the conditions of your cultivation room envelopes or primary facility envelopes, doing what's called a post-occupancy evaluation or post-occupancy commissioning, where you're trying to understand that your systems are all talking and integrating with each other appropriately, operating at peak performance, or if they're not, what you need to do. So that's kind of the very first thing. Like if we're talking about how to prepare, it's going to be assessing what you have going on right now, whether that's to build a new facility, expand an existing facility, or renovate an existing facility. That is primary goal number one in preparation, is understanding what you have.
That's great. And how, one of the big things that from looking at who's on the call list, we've got a bunch of cultivation, product manufacturing, and energy folks. So we're covering the whole broad spectrum of the industry here. So Kim, one of the first things you have to figure out is, either what are you going to do for your energy? Can you get enough energy, or what are you doing with your energy now? How much planning can someone do with that?
Well, in that case, Jeremy, I'll troubleshoot with Kim in the panelist channel.
Sure.
Jeremy, can you make any comments on Shawn's question about, as it relates to what you just said about evaluating power needs? Can you give a little bit more needs on evaluate?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I briefly touched on the idea of energy audits and metering and understanding that. Once you evaluate your power needs, if we're talking specifically about cultivation, you can assess whether there are changes to your facility that you can make that's going to impact both our ecological bottom line and our economical bottom line. And I like Shawn mentioned, I've talked a little bit before about this idea of holistic sustainability or triple bottom line sustainability. That's getting into things, economic sustainability, social sustainability, and ecological sustainability. So you might be looking at a cultivator first, looking at how you can air seal your building better than you currently have. And that is immediately going to improve your energy efficiency and reduce your loads on your HVAC. You could look at what type of lighting you're using. This is so specific from a cultivation standpoint to what you currently have. If you're not using LED lighting, then that could be a change, a very, very significant change that would improve your energy efficiency, reduce your HVAC needs, and improve your energy consumption, and ultimately your economic bottom line. So those are changes that can be made, like I said, through that assessment. Just one example. There are many, many others that could be considered with that.
Definitely, and from my point of view, it's also not strictly just the what you think is the worst energy consumer. It's not just your lighting in a facility, in a cultivation facility, you've got a third lighting, a third HVAC, and a third other. So there's a broad range of places where you can detail this and figure out what's going on. And I think if you're running a manufacturing facility or a production facility or even retail, your energy use is your energy use. You might just as well start figuring that out. But definitely in a production facility, and even at a retail level. I'm sure everyone has. Jeremy, I'm sure everyone has LED lights in a retail facility. Yeah. I don't think you can build a new one these days without it. But
you can. It's interesting, like what people will try to get away with. But going to the lighting idea in HVAC in a retail facility, you can start looking at that idea of branding and user experience. Talking about maybe interactive displays, things like that. These are all things that you can invest in your facility that impact that social sustainability component on how you engage with your clientele and your customers, and improve that user experience and the branding of who you are as a dispensary, while at the same time improving your bottom line economically in terms of how much energy you're using. And this might be, I don't know if Kim is back when being able to hear and I don't know if everybody near her, but that goes a lot into then after you've made those energy reductions, then looking at renewable energy sources, and that's kind of like that tiered step. That's what you can do, get more energy efficient from that, then look at renewable energy, because that's going to reduce the impact of like how big your renewable energy systems need to be.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's your turn, Kim. Like, how long does it take to plan for that? I mean, again, we're talking about planning. So, this is not going to happen this quarter. It may happen by the end of the year and it'll take effect immediately. But, I'm assuming switching energy resources and doing a whole energy plan is not a 1 week process. Can you give us a ballpark on what someone needs to do?
Yeah, there's permitting involved per municipality, which is up to the municipality. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Wherever you're located, for sure. Yep. Permitting, financing, and equipment delivery are the top three.
Yeah.
If you're looking for financing under 280, we'll see what happens. But for equipment, if you're definitely going to go renewable or sustainable, on or off grid, every single design, as Jeremy would know, is like a snowflake. They're different. You need certain components. We know that we can do, say, something like carbon capture and reintroduce it into fertigation, that kind of thing. But to get the actual equipment on site can be 6 to 9 months after permitting has been. So it's been approved. So it's better to be proactive that way. Like I know in the last webinar, someone was saying, it's not like you want to take these excess funds and go buy a Lamborghini. No, you want to invest back into your business and see it succeed.
Yeah.
Even on the retail end, even on the retail end at dispensaries, they've got interactive. What's involved with the product you're buying, terpenes, things like that, so you can know what you're buying.
Right. And how much of an investment is the planning portion of this? Because we're talking about trying to do some of this ahead of time before you see the money. Can someone start the process?
If you're working with just say our engineers, you want the scope of engineering, the scope of development, and then you apply immediately for permitting. That's the order of things for us. But the main thing is, what I found here in New Jersey is that when cannabis went from just medical to recreational, it was like the gold rush had come to the East Coast. And people were buying up properties in lower income areas to get some kind of deduction. But guess what? They don't have the energy. So the energy supply, the grid supply. So a lot of these new startup facilities have to go off grid, or they're going to pay for transformers, sometimes substations, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit. Sorry, Shawn. Go ahead.
No, go. I was gonna throw it to you.
Okay. So I was gonna follow up on something that Kim mentioned, because you kind of touched on the idea of cogeneration and combined heat and power. Just as we talk about renewables, just kind of quick touch is like, don't think renewables are just solar. It's so site specific to the comment that Kim made about it being like a snowflake. You could have everything from solar to wind to water source power to combined heat and power, what I often call tri-generation, because you're using bio waste, say, from your existing facility, if you're a cultivator, to turn that into heat and power for yourself, but also using the CO2 that's being re-injected back into your facility. So it could even be something like battery storage or ice storage, where it allows you to get into a demand response program and it reduced your utility costs by your kilowatt hour price. So those are all things that you can consider from a renewables type standpoint and being invested in. And then that allows us to get into also kind of touch on this as well, federally subsidized loans now, federal tax credits for energy efficiency for renewables that you can't take now. So these are all things that can be planned for in advance, assessing your site, understanding what the appropriate type of system is and what those credits might look like. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And I think, to further that discussion, we've talked that you may be seeing money, you may be seeing tax benefits. Casson is wondering, what kind of levels of investments can people plan on making? I mean, and like 50K or 500K, but I think it's going to depend on the size of your business, because this is going to flow to the smallest mom and pop as well as the MSO. But can realistically a mom and pop take their 50K tax savings and see some real benefit?
Absolutely. So quick hit on that. The first things that I mentioned about the idea of, like, particularly if you're a cultivator, I don't know what you do, Cass, and I apologize. If you're a cultivator, really any type of facility, is that idea of like air sealing or improving your filtration in your facility or things like that. Those are all energy efficient savings that essentially cost very, very little to do. And those low cost things, the low hanging fruit, are the first things that you should grab. The second thing, and that's going to improve your economics overall and allow you to invest farther into the future. The second part of this is, I mentioned early on about the idea of traditional funding. If you are all of a sudden saying, okay, I'm going to have an additional $50,000 every year now, you can look at that from a long-term projection with a potential traditional lender and potentially use that for funding and say, okay, now I'm just making payments on this. That $50,000 a year in extra funds is now allowing me to take out funding that allows me to invest in, say, new lighting or new HVAC systems or other more large scale purchases like that $500,000 that you mentioned, that's paid off over a longer period of time with those funds that you know you're going to have. And then you get your interest off too.
So I can whatever, 3x it, 4x it, 5x it, some number, some multiple, taking advantage of even smaller savings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Kim, does this give the companies in the cannabis business any leverage with the energy companies?
Any leverage?
To maybe negotiate better deals or
Well, I think redundancy in renewables is an issue for safety and product safety, growth, health. Yeah. Dealing with the utility, I don't know. We've got 4 different in New Jersey, and 2 of them, you can't run a business unless you're off grid. So as far as will it impact, I think so. We've got a great green initiative. We can definitely work with numbers to bring the cost lower per kilowatt hour than what is retail.
And and is there again a sort of a time frame for that? Is that the sort of 9-month plan that you were talking about?
Yeah, it goes into you want somebody like Jeremy. You want an engineer, an architect, somebody right from the get-go. If you're dealing with a real estate company too that I've dealt with for cannabis, you want to know the utility first. You've got to know what the utility will allow in the area that you want to build. That's first thing. What is their cost? And can you even use something like, we had incidences of there was no allowable rooftop solar or visible solar allowed. That was when I was with the former company. Now we have things like turbines, all kinds of things that can qualify you for 40% if it's American made deduction, 50% if it's a lower income area, you know.
Yeah.
So I
And-
think the initiatives are there to save money right from the get-go, but it takes good planning.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and since you've got Jeremy on the hook as the planning guy, you know, what are what are some of the things that you should be planning? You know, whether you're processing or transportation, water planning and are there folks beyond you, other subcontractors that folks should be taking? Do you handle all that? Does an engineer handle that, or does someone have to look at all?
So that long-term planning effect, yeah. So in an ideal world, you're going to use something that's called integrated process or integrated design, which is essentially you have a point person, usually an architect or engineer, that then has sub-entities under them, a renewable energy planner, your other MEP engineers, et cetera. That then is all, it's an integrated process in the sense that everybody's working together to define the most efficient method move forward for you specific, your site, et cetera. And so kind of segueing some other aspects of things that could be looked at that could help improve your bottom line, improve your facility, improve what you're producing and putting out the door for your clients. Water reclamation or rainwater harvesting recapture systems, how that's being filtered, all of that can improve. Right now, particularly if you get out in the west of the U.S., water is a huge problem. And it's something that being able to improve your efficiency dramatically in terms of your water usage can not only improve your water costs, but also your sewer costs as well. We have a facility that we designed that recaptured 85% of its HVAC condensate, and then from there we recaptured any sort of runoff and clean down that was all filtered. And then the remaining, I think it was about 89% of the water needs was captured through rainwater harvesting. So the facility was basically net zero water. And that put their water costs at virtually nothing. And it put their sewer costs at a very low number as well. And then when you run that through a multi-filtration step, you're also providing back to your plants, if we're talking cultivation here, or even your processing facilities that need water. You're putting back a very clean, purified water into your product that you're developing and cultivating. So water efficiencies and the purity of it can have a big effect on your product. And all these things can actually ultimately allow you, when you're looking at these more sustainable methods of cultivating or processing, can allow you to create a better product. And that can get into things too, like possibly going to certify the organic of your facility as well, which you can use from a social standpoint, like marketing on your packages and that sort of thing. So, and then kind of one other aspect to touch on real quick, hitting on processing. If you are investing into, say, new equipment or different types of equipment to expand your product line that you might be doing, that may need to look at things like building code because of fire safety, particularly if you're moving to something that's like a solvent-based system to expand your product line. So these are all things that you can start to plan for, kind of going back to what your team is that you're developing to help you, move forward with these ideas and invest that money that you're going to get.
And I think actually you threw us up a softball about the water use and reclaiming, because I think it's something we need to talk a little bit about. It is the potential long-term impacts of sustainability and what you need to do to get ready for that. And that's also a planning process, just like this is going to be. And from my point of view, it's really going to be the same thing, and I think it will help. Thinking about your sustainability path would really help you companies in figuring out what they need to do to to plan for 280E changes and potential extra money. And from my point of view, the one thing you need to do is you need to start, measuring, and start reporting to yourself and be ready to report to the outside world what you're doing. And, your energy use, your water use, your waste stream. There's other things too, but those are the key things that the cannabis industry has hanging over its head, and they're all going to go to your bottom line. And it will, once you get a handle on this, once you get a handle on how you're spending your energy, what you're doing with your water, and what the waste stream you're producing is, I think it's going to set up folks for having a much better handle on how to deal with a little bit more money. It's not a big upfront cost or downstream cost. You could use a spreadsheet, or you can use some simple software to do it. It's out there, it exists in the world, even Metric. Metric can actually help you track your vape battery waste stream. And so, that's not its job, but it can help you do that. So I think there's a lot of stuff, on the renewable energy side, and there's a lot of stuff in the planning side that folks should be taking advantage of now, and start really doing this.
Yeah, it's interesting, touching on a topic you just mentioned there, Shawn, about that assessment and then the reinvestment of the money and back at what everybody I think really needs to. Well, I think the biggest points I think everyone needs to take from this entire session here is these reinvestments back into your facility to make it more sustainable, more socially sustainable, more economically sustainable, more ecologically sustainable, ultimately are going to impact your bottom line in a very, very positive way. They're going to ultimately make you more money. And that small investment that improves it's a concept that's called lifecycle costing. And that looking at that small upfront or that upfront cost, that if you can extrapolate it over a longer period of time, maybe through funding or something like that, will ultimately allow you to earn more money because you become more efficient across the board. And it's that kind of triple bottom line understanding that we talked about with sustainability. So yes, kind of going to, I think it was the Lamborghini comment that Ken made, like, yeah, you could go out and buy a Lamborghini, but does it really make sense? It's let's invest in, let's make your facility a Ferrari is what I would say. And then you'll have a lot more money to work with after that because of that peak performance that your facility is operating at.
Right. And I think, people have operated in this industry, whether it's retail or manufacturing or cultivation, with the heads down, I got to get through the day point of view. And, and I think, that and there's reasons for that. But, this could be, the 280E changes could and should be a little bit of a kick to maybe lift up your head a little bit and start looking forward, and planning for your sustainability, planning for making more money, and a little navel gazing and seeing where you are and what you need to get done to make to.
It's actually, I'm just kind of what you're talking about there, and I just saw a comment that Cashin made in the chat. This idea of market volatility, everything from your electricity costs to your water costs shooting up in price, like the cost of your product collapsing because maybe the market gets flooded with products. If everybody takes their 280E money and starts, expands to have more product, but then the market isn't there, so the cost of the product declines. How are you going to handle that? And making your facility more efficient, whether it's through water or electricity usage, having renewables, things like that, reclamation, it insulates you to that market volatility. And it allows you to manage the highs and flow ebbs of the market. And as Shawn was just saying, not burying your head, but actually seeing into the future of what I can do to protect myself and also be more financially viable long term.
Yeah, and so Kim, what do you see coming on the energy side? I mean, there's combined heat and power, there's renewables, there's geothermal. What is like the mix right now?
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for us, for me, and like I stated before, every single situation, it's dependent upon where you're located in the country.
Yeah.
What your needs are. We can do anything from, you want redundancy. You want to make sure that the facility is safe from any, you want backup if it's an indoor facility, for sure. And everything from CHP to waste management to turbines to it's all in the mix, and it's really independent of each circumstance that you encounter. Everybody's got different needs, really relative to where they're located. That's been my observation. Ideally, I think if 280E is eliminated, we should all have greenhouses in the Southwest. That would be ideal. But that's not what we're looking at right now. We're looking at, you're in Massachusetts, I'm in New Jersey. We've got warehouse grow facilities, building in a box in a building. And they have, some of these have to be retrofitted. But if you want to move forward, I can't reiterate enough, you need to have an engineer, an architect, someone that's going to guide you through it to make the proper, even facility obtainment, like where you choose. That's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I think, you know, we the one thing we did leave out, where, you know, we've talked about cultivation, but we haven't talked about different types of cultivation. And I think from a sustainability point of view, it's easy to assume that growing outside is the sustainable option. And it's an option.
Yeah.
It is an option.
It's interesting you bring that. Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Shawn, because several years ago, we did an assessment on that, and it's such climate dependent. Whether you're in a northern climate, a Midwest climate, a southeastern or southwestern climate, and assessing what conditions you have there, what makes the most sense from, and then also, I mean, whether you can go outside or indoors, you really have to also look at state laws too. That has a substantial impact on it as well. Yep. But just purely from an energy efficiency standpoint, climate has such a huge impact on what makes the most sense from a cultivation standpoint.
Yeah, you know, and all three are viable options. You know, indoor, greenhouse with additional light, and outdoor cultivation. You know, they're very different products. They're very different markets. I know someone in the space actually does all three. They're one company has an indoor, outdoor, and a greenhouse grow, and they grow for different segments of their market. You know, and they cost average to make a reasonable, you know, position in the market, even with the lousy tax situation. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's you got to think they're thinking ahead. You know, and they're planning. They're not just trying to do the same thing over and over again. You know, and we've got someone from Morocco, and I wish I had all the answers from Morocco. But I don't know if everyone is seeing this, but you know, it's great to see you know, Idris you know, chiming in. You know, there's, again, I think taking what we've been saying and looking at, you know, what you're going to be able to sell a product for, what your environment is going to be able to tolerate, what kind of a product you're going to sell. You're going to sell, and and your water, energy, and waste streams. Just do that analysis before you even get it going. So you'll be able to manipulate your business plan and and what you end up building to get it done. I mean, that's my point of view. But that's a great position to be in right now, is to be able to take what's happening in the U.S. market and the rest of the world markets and use that as your planning tool.
So and I'm looking at the Q&As here as well. There's a question on about differences in state by state, and I think it's referring to renewable energy from an off-grid operation standpoint. I'm assuming it's referring to cultivation, but I suppose it could also be for processing as well. State by state, thinking a little bit about the 280E, since that's kind of our primary topic here, and descheduling. Some states have it where they follow the federal law on that, so you're actually getting hit twice over in terms of your taxes. So if you have the deschedule, you're going to get that. In those states that follow the federal law on that, you are going to benefit at a state level as well. From a state level, from a renewable energy credit standpoint, every state's a little bit different with that, and has different benefits. Most states allow you to take those credits where you can't take the renewable energy credits at the federal level. And then also, like I touched on before, climate location is such an important aspect in terms of what type of renewable system you would use. But to ultimately go to off-grid, particularly with cultivation, because it's such an energy-intensive operation, the primary aspect, whether it's expansion or a new facility, is going to be reducing your load first. It's not going to be looking at renewables. Renewables should be the absolutely last thing that you look at. And it's not saying you're going to need them, but you don't want a gigantic renewable system. You want it to be as small and as efficient as possible. And you want to first look at how energy efficient you can be, whether you can use passive design strategies. If it's somewhere that can use a greenhouse that passively, instead of using lighting, going that route, how well insulated your facility is, looking at passive strategies like solar reflectance on your building if you're in a high heat or a hot climate. There's so many different things you want that are so site specific or state specific to ultimately get to that off-grid operation standpoint. It is doable, and especially if there's this influx of cash and added availability from a funding standpoint. But it really comes down to that site, assessing it specifically to that, being as energy and water efficient first as possible, and then looking at renewables to get to the off-grid.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of energy no matter what you're doing, and it's a planning process. You can't just flip a switch. You're going to be planning and committed to it, whichever phase of the space you're in. And one thing there's a lot of analysis that's gone on as to where in the world each type of growing makes sense, and surprisingly, some of the hottest climates, the hottest and most humid climates, are the best targets for indoor growing. When you do a full detail analysis of what it's going to take and to get and what kind of product you're going to get out, it is surprising but true. And it's research done in the agriculture space where they don't have large margins of well, not that cannabis has large margins now anymore, but it's a large margin compared to growing lettuce. And you should look at the mapping and see what the humidity, temperature, daylight map looks like for your location, and that will definitely guide the process of where you should sort of put your apples in your facilities.
Yeah, and that doesn't even get into comparing like the type of product you're going to yield out of it and the quality of the product, because you have to, if you're doing an outdoor grow, you're going to have to look at things like phytoremediation. Hemp and cannabis are natural remediators, both of air, water, and soil. And so if you have a plant that is remediating the soil or air around it, it's going to reduce the quality of that product because it's cleaning pollution out of that environment. It's great if you're intending to do that, like cleaning up a brownfield site. But if you were trying to grow a product to sell, not so great. But that actually goes to your indoor grow. I mentioned earlier about the clean water, but also air sealing. If you're sealing your environment, your cultivation environment, you're not having pollutants from the exterior coming into your facility, and now your product is just uptaking the CO2 that you're pumping into the environment. You're going to have a much higher quality product, much higher yield. So these are all things that you can improve your facility on, small investments that will ultimately yield better product for you and higher value. So that's something to consider as well.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there's one more thing that we should look at in the indoor growing space, it's in terms of comparing it to outdoor grows. In Massachusetts, the majority, and I'm sure it's the case on the East Coast and probably on the West Coast, you have to test your soil, because in Massachusetts, you cannot grow. You can't grow vegetables. You can't grow cannabis. You can't grow hemp. You can't in the soil. You have to grow in raised beds with new soil, because of 75 years of lead gas. It's the state won't let you, and with good reason. It varies across the state, but there's a large amount of lead in the soil, anywhere there were a lot of cars, up until 1975 or so, whenever the lead went out of the gas, and it's just layered on there. And as you said, cannabis is a phytoremediator. It's probably the worst culprit it's the best remediator, but it's the worst culprit for taking heavy metals out of the soil. You can get away with
hemp is usually actually used for brown cleanup, which is amazing. So yeah.
And you can get away with something that grows in 3 weeks without it picking up enough lead or cadmium to be a real problem. But something that stays in the soil for 3 months or 6 months is going to pick it up. So anybody else have any other questions? I mean, I think we've been running through this. Brian, have you seen anything that we've sort of ignored?
I don't think so. I'm honestly at a similar loss with Jeremy as Jeremy was in that last question. Of these last two remaining questions from Casson came at very specific moments in the conversation. So I'm not exactly sure if either of these that are still in the open Q&A are immediately ones that you want us to dive into. I think we could jump into them. Otherwise, we can expand on this and make sure that we respond to this question in the recap. And Casson, as being the moderator of our previous episode, I would love if we could dive into these. So if there is a specific clarifying point for either of Casson's questions on the Q&A board that Casson might be able to provide in the chat room, let Casson know, and then we'll continue the conversation, because I definitely want to make sure that we capture these two remaining points.
Okay.
So the second question on that Casson had there, I think as far as the AHJs, I, as an architect, have never ran into any problems with the authority jurisdiction in developing cannabis facilities if it's legal, as long as you're following code and you follow proper documentation. Whether that's implementing renewable energy, the facility itself, as long as you're meeting code requirements, I've never really ran into any issues with municipalities as far as the facilities themselves. They're always concerned about odor. They're concerned about energy usage. making sure that you are properly supplied, making sure that you are properly protected from fire hazards. But as long as you're meeting code, there's really not been much of a pushback. They're actually usually very intrigued about the facility itself, because a lot of times they've never dealt with the cannabis facility. So they're using it as a learning opportunity for themselves. So it's really that conversation, communication at that point.
Yeah, I guess could you speak to the strategies on ways that you might be able to encourage support and facilitate that communication between your local authorities there, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a twofold thing. I think it comes down to if the municipality is welcoming cannabis facilities with open arms, or if they're kind of like, we really don't want this, but it's being forced on us. And it really kind of depends on your state law. So very site specific. If it's open arms, it's really just having a conversation. I remember the very first facility that I did in Ohio, we literally were able to schedule a meeting with every plans examiner, the director of the building department, the mayor, and I believe the director of their zoning department. We got all of them to sit down in a room and have a conversation about the facility, like while we were in design. It was amazing. I've also been where the municipality really didn't want it, and it just became a hassle to try to even get a hold of somebody to talk to. But that's just, you kind of have to just continue to try. And what we ultimately found out with that is having somebody local helped a little bit in terms of if they already knew some of these individuals and had worked with them on non-cannabis projects. So having a local engineer or architect of record, even if you have somebody that might be the cannabis architect or engineer, having somebody that's a local architect or engineer of record to help facilitate that communication if the municipality is, say, less than thrilled about the idea, that can help that as well.
Yeah, those are really great points. Shawn and Kim, do you have any similar sort of successes or difficulties in working with municipal agents to get these different permits and improvements implemented?
I can just echo what Jeremy said. It's a case by case, what the municipality is, whether they want it there or not. It's, you meet with some good people that are pro, and then you meet some people that are just have animosity toward the whole issue. So that can slow some things down, but definitely having somebody local on the end is a good thing.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I think throughout the program, you all spoke so much to having to make things work in this patchwork of regulations and legality that we find ourselves in across the U.S. And I really think that touches on that point as well. Well, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, so I do, before turning it back over to the panelists for final thoughts, I do want to just try and tie all of this together. Since this amazing multi-part series has been spearheaded by some of NCIA's most engaged members, including Casson, as well as some amazing members of our Banking and Financial Services Committee, I'd love to get a quick response from our members of our Facility Design Committee here while we're on the call about how becoming an NCIA member can help businesses prepare for these upcoming changes to regulations, and more importantly, optimize their facility design and operations. And I'll turn it over to you, Shawn, as the leader of the committee, and then we can turn it over to the other ones from there.
Okay. Well, I'll start. Yeah. So I'll start it out. I mean, I think the one thing to keep in mind, and this came up earlier on when we were talking about 280E, it's the biggest impacts are for the biggest businesses, but the actual impacts are spread across all of the businesses, small to large. And I think the majority of cannabis businesses are small businesses. It's the large MSOs or the publicly held companies get a lot of attention, but they are small businesses, not even small to medium. They're small businesses. And as a result, I think it's what what I said earlier, they tend to go heads down. They don't have people in positions to just sort of look to the future. And you go heads down, get the day-to-day stuff done, and hope that the thing keeps moving. And I think that's where NCIA comes in. It's like it's more representative of the industry at large, and getting together with folks who understand your problems and there's enough of us to make an impact and move the thing forward. It's the MSO of small businesses.
Oh, I love that. That's going to be a takeaway that we're going to use for future marketing efforts. Well, being as you two are newcomers to the facility design committee this term, but have already picked up the baton and are here presenting this amazing webinar, can you speak to that as well as to what membership with NCIA has done for you and your businesses, as well as engagement with some of our higher level engagement opportunities like our member-led committees?
I definitely
picking up on. Go ahead, Kim. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Kim. All you.
I was just going to say, I feel that as far as staying ahead of what's really happening, what you need to do, being a member definitely facilitates that. Facilities and design committee, but facilitates that. Sorry for my stutter. I think if you're engaged with like-minded people in a like-minded business, it can only help your personal business and personal cause, and I'm just real grateful, not that I've been so wonderful, but grateful to be here, part of it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kim. Yeah, Jeremy, let's take it home.
Yeah, picking up on what Shawn said, I love what he said. He absolutely should use that as a marketing term, phrase. So my architecture practice is small business. And so looking at that from kind of the two different worlds, the cannabis world and just architecture profession in general, the thing about NCIA that I've found is that there's this great resource of knowledge. It's bringing all these people together that have experience and presenting things like these webinars, blog posts, things like that. And when you come into it as a small business, you're like, okay, what can I do that might improve my bottom line? But as somebody asked, that $50,000 investment, what's that going to get me? And so you can learn these things. You have that opportunity to have conversations with people, make those connections, learn these small investments, how they can improve what you're doing, because as a small business, you may not have the ability to make these gigantic investments. But if I can figure out, okay, if I make this one small change and this one small change and this one small change, it's going to improve my operations, and then that might lead to something bigger and better in the future. And again, further changes. It's that kind of long-term projection. And I think the NCIA, it really helps that. I mean, it's that knowledge base of all these different small businesses coming together to help each other out and be successful.
Oh, that was absolutely perfect. I think all three of you all absolutely knocked the ball out of the park there. Shawn, as the moderator of today's fantastic conversation, I do want to give you an opportunity to have a final thought that might be program specific. Do you feel the need to leave anything in anybody's back pocket, leaving today's conversation, maybe a preview of some other things that you all are going to be doing down the road later this term?
Nothing big, just my saw. Start measuring everything.
All right, love that. Well, with that, let's give a big round of applause to these amazing panelists. You all have that react button. I've been seeing you use it throughout the session. And as they leave the stage, let them know if there's any additional questions or comments that you might have in the webinar chat room. As always, we're going to close out the program with just a quick teaser of some upcoming events and activities that we'd love all of your all's participation in. First and foremost, later this week, we have our monthly member web orientation. If you want to learn how to maximize your current or just secured NCIA membership following this program, make sure to head to our website and reach out to our membership team to secure your spot in this 30-minute session. And then additionally, mark your calendars for episode 4 in our new multi-part industry essentials series. This session, Navigating Insurance and Risk Management in the Schedule 3 Era, will be taking place 2 weeks from now, Tuesday, July 9th, right after the July 4th holiday. Same time, same place, same bat channel. So mark your calendars and head to NCIA's website to secure your spot today. And then all of you NCIA members that are here in the room, you all should have gotten a little quick sneak preview of our upcoming Q3 events. Huge thank you to our sponsors and partners, which made the inaugural Stakeholder Summit series so successful across March, February, and April of this year. We're very excited to be returning to some of our previous markets as well as some of our most established ones with another round of stakeholder summits that are going to be taking place across September and October. If you are trying to get on board and sign up to become a sponsor or partner, we're having early bird rates that are going to be offered exclusive to NCIA members over the next few weeks before we announce and open up registration at the beginning of July. So make sure to reach out to our team and secure your spot now, and then mark your calendars for this stop if you live in Detroit, New York City, Columbus, or Los Angeles. All right. Thank you all for joining us today for Committee Insights, taking the long view, strategic facility design considerations for the Schedule 3 era. We hope you found today's discussion with our Facility Designs Committee insightful and valuable. Throughout our discussion, we explored crucial areas impacting cannabis facility design and operations, from understanding the impact of these tax changes to strategies for maximizing operational efficiency and navigating the path to sustainable growth. We've uncovered key insights to help propel your business forward. As we conclude, remember to leverage these strategic plans in your own endeavors to enhance operational efficiency and ensure long-term viability in this evolving industry landscape. Thank you for being here again with us today. Stay tuned for some more upcoming webinars and events, like I just mentioned, and then have a great day, and may your facilities prosper with the wisdom gained today. Goodbye, and we'll see you next time.